You have been taught the wrong rule about influence. Most people believe influence comes from confidence. Confidence is not the real variable. The real variable is calibration. The moment you enter a room, whether it is a meeting, a dinner, or a social gathering, something invisible begins to happen. The group starts running tests on you. Not consciously, but structurally. Who laughs first? Who explains themselves? Who tries too hard to belong? These signals determine something fundamental. They determine who becomes the center of gravity in the room, and who becomes background noise. Here is the disturbing part. Most intelligent people fail these tests within the first 60 seconds. Not because they lack competence, but because they leak status through behaviors that appear completely normal. Over-agreeing, over-explaining, over-participating. These behaviors are rewarded in school. They are punished in power structures. This is the moment where most individuals fall into what we call the validation trap. The psychological frequency where your behavior is no longer governed internally. It is governed by the group's approval. The desire to belong becomes stronger than the desire to remain sovereign. Today we install the protocols of factional navigation, where you do not join groups. You navigate them. You do not chase acceptance. You become the independent variable the group must adjust to. I am Grace, the Trinity English scholar. Before we begin the audit, ensure you have subscribed to the channel. This is not a request for attention. It is the biometric signature of your commitment to the sovereign curriculum. Today's forensic documentation expands this doctrine in technical detail. But for this session, the focus is operational. We are transitioning you from a state of group dependency to a state of factional sovereignty. And we will begin with a simple question. If the group defines your status, who owns your identity? The transition to high-value social engineering requires a fundamental shift. You must move from reactive presence to proactive calibration. Reactive individuals mirror the room. They match the laughter. They match the emotional temperature. They match the conversational speed. They believe alignment produces belonging. But alignment produces something else. Predictability. In the Trinity architecture, every social environment functions as a faction. Each faction maintains its hierarchy through the testing of new variables. The average individual enters these spaces with what we call high-variance energy. Too eager. Too defensive. Too expressive. The sovereign enters with structural neutrality. Calm observation. Controlled speech. Measured engagement. This neutrality begins with a behavioral signal most people never notice. Group laughter. Observe any meeting. Observe any dinner table. Observe any professional gathering. Most people laugh immediately. Why? Because laughter signals alignment. Alignment signals safety. But the sovereign does something different. The sovereign activates what we call the still axis. Instead of performing the affirmation laugh, you offer a clinical smile. You acknowledge the humor. But you do not emotionally merge with the group. This stillness creates a status gap. The group recognizes something unusual. You are the only variable whose reactions cannot be predicted. And unpredictability produces influence. Next, we install the clinical compliment protocol. Most compliments function as social currency. People praise others to gain approval, which means the compliment places the speaker beneath the recipient. The Trinity scholar uses compliments differently. You do not flatter. You audit. Instead of saying, "That was a great presentation," you say, "The structural clarity of that argument was notable." The difference is subtle, but powerful. You are no longer the admirer. You are the evaluator. This works alongside atmospheric decoupling. In moments of tension or debate, the average individual merges with the emotional atmosphere. Speech accelerates. Sentences become longer. Narrative fillers appear. But the sovereign compresses language. You speak less. But each statement carries higher informational density. When the room becomes chaotic, the quiet voice becomes the gravitational center. Finally, we install boundary encryption. Most individuals reveal personal information in an attempt to create trust. But information is currency. When you overshare, you dilute authority. The sovereign maintains a black box. You do not discuss personal narratives. You discuss objectives, protocols, operational focus. Your internal world becomes strategically private. When the faction cannot predict your reactions, cannot access your internal variables, and cannot influence your emotional state, you cease to be a participant. You become the system administrator of the room. Walkthrough 1. Everyday sovereignty. Imagine a scenario. You are at a social gathering. One individual, usually the dominant personality in the group, decides to test your status. They offer a teasing remark, a joke about your habits, your personality, your interests. The purpose is simple. They want to see whether you will laugh along with your own diminishment. The non-Trinity response typically looks like this. Oh yeah, haha, you're probably right. I guess I am kind of a nerd about that stuff. I probably spend way too much time thinking about it. I should probably relax a little more. The laughter signals submission. The apology confirms the hierarchy. Status lost. Now observe the Trinity response. The observation regarding my technical focus is accurate. Pause 3 seconds. Detail orientation is a high-utility variable that protects the integrity of the output. We are not discussing hobbies. We are identifying the baseline of competence. Notice what happened. The tease was reframed. The joke became a technical observation. The attempt to lower status transformed into a discussion about standards. The teaser suddenly appears unserious. And the hierarchy shifts. Walkthrough 2. Professional sovereignty. Now imagine a professional environment. You are in a meeting with multiple departments. A colleague attempts to dilute your authority by reframing your work as a group effort. Credit redistribution. A classic factional maneuver. The average response becomes emotional. I just want to say that my team actually did most of the work on this and I've been leading the project for months. The tone sounds defensive, which weakens credibility. Now observe the Trinity response. The project's success originates from the architectural framework established in the first quarter. Collaborative input functioned as a secondary variable within that structure. The documentation confirms that the core deliverables were produced under our department's governance. Maintaining clarity around the primary architect ensures continuity for the next phase. Notice the shift. No emotion. No personal defense. Only structural language. You have removed the conversation from politics and returned it to architecture. Authority restored. Walkthrough 3. Crisis governance. Now consider a more aggressive scenario. A group failure occurs. Leadership attempts to localize the blame onto a single individual. You. The non-Trinity reaction usually begins with apology. I'm sorry if I caused this problem. I thought I was doing what I was told. Apology signals ownership of the failure, which allows the group to offload responsibility. Now observe the Trinity protocol. The attempt to localize a systemic failure onto a single variable is noted. The available data indicates the breakdown occurred within the communication protocol. We are not discussing personal fault. We are identifying the structural bottleneck that compromised the output. Remediation will begin once the reporting architecture is restored. Notice the transformation. The accusation becomes a technical analysis. The emotional pressure disappears. And the person who was supposed to be blamed becomes the architect of the solution. Key takeaways. High-value social engineering requires the removal of the agreeability variable. Your objective is not to be liked. Your objective is to remain structurally independent of the group. First principle. Stop attempting to fit in. Membership is a low-status objective. Advisory influence is a high-status objective. Second principle. Use the clinical complement. Do not flatter. Audit. Categorical nouns reposition you as the evaluator of performance. Third principle. Install boundary encryption. Transparency is the currency of the managed class. Privacy is the currency of sovereignty. Protect your internal variables. When you stop explaining your life and begin legislating your presence, the faction adjusts to your frequency, not the other way around. Homework. Your assignment over the next 48 hours is the installation of the clinical auditor persona. First exercise. In your next group interaction, do not laugh immediately at a joke. Count silently to 2. Offer a clinical smile instead of an affirmation laugh. Observe the change in dynamics. Second exercise. Deliver one compliment using only categorical nouns. For example, the structural alignment of that presentation was effective. Observe how the compliment changes your perceived role. Third exercise. Audit your language for unnecessary collective safety. If you say we when you mean I, correct it. Speak as the author of your statements. Fourth exercise. Identify one person who habitually teases you. Apply the walkthrough one protocol. Label the observation. Reframe the value. Remain silent. Let the room process the shift. Final exercise. Create 3 responses that protect your privacy. When someone asks personal questions, use terms such as operational privacy, current developmental focus, strategic priorities. Your internal narrative remains encrypted. I am Grace, the Trinity English scholar. We do not speak to be understood. We speak to establish the architecture within which understanding occurs. I will see you in the next frame.